monarchy will be shifting in a slightly different direction.
I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda.
One of the British royal family's most powerful fortunes may have just quietly changed hands in a way that Diana's closest allies never expected. As the monarchy continues to grapple with health scares,
Buckingham Palace, which has announced that the king has been diagnosed with cancer.
feuds,
She was vilified.
and a throne in transition,
The King's illness is a reality check for the firm. It means Prince William is match fit for a possible call-up to the top job.
William's sweeping inheritance is reigniting a debate the palace has been trying to suppress for years. Was Diana's legacy kept deliberately out of reach from the people who deserved it most? And why are certain members of the royal household allegedly furious about what William now controls? Join us as we expose the secrets the palace never wanted the world to see. The inheritance nobody saw coming. When Queen Elizabeth died on September 8, 2022,
Buckingham Palace has announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
the British monarchy changed instantly. Titles got handed off.
Stand firm and hold fast from henceforth this seat of royal dignity, which is yours by the authority of Almighty God.
And roles changed. The line of succession reshuffled in ways people had talked about for decades, but it still felt like a massive shock when it finally happened. In the middle of all that public grief and royal ceremony, something else happened very quietly behind the scenes. Prince William instantly took over one of the most valuable private real estate portfolios in the entire United Kingdom. The Duchy of Cornwall is a massive pile of land that belonged to King Charles before he took the throne, and it handed itself over to William the exact second Charles became king. It was not a gift, and it was not a normal inheritance. It happened completely automatically because of a medieval rule that has run the British monarchy for over 700 years. The oldest son of the king or queen just gets the Duchy of Cornwall. There is no paperwork, and there is no negotiation. It is just an ancient law doing exactly what it was designed to do. What that meant in practice was staggering. The duchy covers over 128,000 acres across the south of England, including protected woodlands, remote coastlines, working farms, and commercial properties spread across 23 counties. Its valuation at the time of transfer was estimated at around $1.2 billion. It generates significant annual revenue through tenancies, agriculture, and land use agreements. In the year to March 2024 alone, the duchy raised £23.6 million, which funds William's household, his public work, and the entire operations of Kensington Palace. William has spoken openly about what he intends to do with all of that. He does not want to be a traditional landowner. He has described himself as unmistakably a man on a mission, determined to reform the duchy so it operates as a force for social good rather than a passive revenue machine. He visits parts of the estate regularly, every 4 to 6 weeks by some accounts, and has framed his role as steward rather than owner. When he eventually becomes king, the duchy will pass to his eldest son, Prince George, and the cycle will continue. None of this was entirely surprising to people who follow the monarchy closely. The rules governing the duchy were known. But what nobody had fully mapped out was how William's position, controlling a billion-pound estate built on a medieval law, would interact with a very different and much more personal inheritance question that was quietly building to a boil. Because the estate everyone was watching was not the only thing Diana left behind, and the things she could not leave to her sons would prove far more explosive than anything that could be calculated in pounds and acres. The money Diana left behind. Before anyone can actually understand what William inherited and why it matters to so many people, there is a story that goes back to the years before Diana died, in 1997. Princess Diana was one of the most closely watched women on the planet during her lifetime. But even the most obsessed royal fans rarely paused to look at the massive pile of cash she was quietly saving up for her sons in the years after her divorce from Prince Charles. Diana received her divorce settlement from Prince Charles in 1996, when the marriage was formally dissolved. The settlement was substantial, though the exact figures were never fully disclosed. Combined with her own assets and the value of her personal belongings, her estate was valued at approximately £13 million at the time of her death the following year. For a woman who had spent 14 years as Princess of Wales and had used that platform to become one of the most recognized charitable figures in the world, it was a fortune that reflected both her status and her independence. Both William and Harry inherited that fortune equally when she died. Because they were minors at the time, the estate was held in trust until each son turned 25, at which point they received their respective shares. The trustees managed the assets carefully in the years between Diana's death and the payouts. By the time William and Harry each came of age and received their inheritances, the money had grown considerably from its original value. Diana's personal jewelry collection passed through that same estate and became one of the most talked-about elements of her legacy. Specific pieces were allocated in ways that honored her wishes and the relationships she had valued. The sapphire and diamond engagement ring that Charles had given Diana in 1981 eventually made its way to William, who used it to propose to Kate Middleton in 2010. It was a moment that stopped royal watchers around the world because it made the connection between Diana and her son's life completely visible and completely public. That ring turned into a symbol of something way bigger than a simple engagement. Every single time Kate wears it at public events, state dinners, or royal parades, it instantly brings back the memory of Diana. It serves as a constant reminder that Diana never actually disappeared from the royal family storyline. Her memory just shifted into a different form, and it now lives on through the everyday choices of the son who grew up missing her. But the jewelry and the financial inheritance were only part of what Diana left behind. The other part was something far more complex, something you cannot divide into equal shares or place in a trust. It was a question about where she belonged and who had the right to decide that, and it was about to become the most emotionally charged dispute in the monarchy that nobody was officially having. Because while William was building his financial legacy, and Kate was wearing Diana's ring at every major occasion, a completely separate inheritance battle was playing out at a place called Althorp, and the people it involved were not the ones most fans expected. The Secret Life of Althorp. For anyone who has ever loved Diana, the name Althorp carries a weight that is hard to overstate. It is the sprawling Spencer family estate in Northamptonshire, a 13,500-acre property that has belonged to the Spencer family since 1508. It is where Diana spent her childhood from the age of 14 until she left home as a young woman to begin her adult life. It holds her earliest memories, her formative years, and the private version of herself that the palace never fully had access to. It is also where she is buried. Following Diana's death in Paris on August 31, 1997, her younger brother, Earl Charles Spencer, decided to bring her home. He did not want her buried in a place determined by royal protocol or palace preference. He wanted her to come back to the family ground, and so he had her buried on a small island known as the Oval, in the center of an artificial lake on the estate. The island is surrounded by water and is accessible only by boat, which means that no casual visitor can reach it, and no crowd will ever gather there. Charles Spencer wrote in his book, Althorp, the story of an English house. The remoteness of the burial site was entirely intentional. He wanted his sister to have the peace in death that she had been so rarely granted in life. He achieved that. The grave is not accessible to the public. It has never been turned into a tourist attraction, despite the estate itself opening its doors to visitors during July and August each year. The house opens, the grounds are open, but the island does not. William and Harry are welcome to visit their mother's grave whenever they wish. Earl Spencer has made that clear on multiple occasions. Harry reportedly visited Althorp during a trip to the United Kingdom in 2024, staying with his uncle for a period. The relationship between Diana's sons and the Spencer side of the family has remained meaningful even through all the turbulence of the royal family's recent years. But visiting is not the same as owning, and the estate itself will never belong to either prince. Althorp was never Diana's to give. This is a point that gets lost in the emotional weight of the story. Diana grew up there, yes. She loved it, absolutely. It is the place most associated with who she was before she became Princess of Wales. But she never owned it. The estate belongs to the Spencer family through a chain of inheritance that runs entirely independently of the royal line. Diana was born into it. She did not control it. The property has been described as the ancestral seat of the Spencer family for more than 5 centuries. It is managed today by Earl Charles Spencer, the 9th to hold that title. He lives there. He runs it. He has spent years restoring and maintaining the house and grounds. And when he dies, the estate will pass not to his daughters, not to his nephews in the royal family, but to his only son. And the identity of that son, and the complicated feelings that have allegedly swirled around his inheritance inside the palace, are where the story about Diana's legacy takes a turn that very few people ever expected. The cousin who gets what William never could. His name is Louis Spencer, Viscount Althorp. He is 31 years old, largely private, and currently building a career as an actor. He studied at the University of Edinburgh and is represented by the Tavistock Wood Talent Agency. A source who spoke to the Telegraph described him as very private, with great acting talent, tall and quiet and sincere and good-natured. He has 3 older sisters, Lady Kitty, Lady Eliza, and Lady Amelia Spencer, all of whom have appeared in the press far more frequently than Louis has. And yet it is Louis, not any of his sisters, not William, not Harry, who stands to inherit the Althorp estate in its entirety. Royal expert Richard Fitzwilliams confirmed to Fox News Digital that the expectation had always been clear. Althorp would pass to the next Earl Spencer through the same ancient system of male primogeniture that has governed aristocratic inheritance in England for centuries. The eldest male heir takes the title, he takes the estate, he takes everything that comes with the Spencer name and the Spencer legacy. Fitzwilliams was asked directly whether William or Harry might ever inherit the property and responded plainly, "No way would William and Harry get the property. Why on earth would someone think they should?" Lady Kitty Spencer was asked about all this in a 2015 interview with Tatler magazine and was straightforward about where she stood. She said she liked the fact that the house stays within the same family with the same surname and that she would not want it any other way for the Spencers. Her father, Charles Spencer, acknowledged that the custom might feel outdated to modern sensibilities, but told the Mail on Sunday that choosing his eldest daughter over his son Louis would go against all the tradition that goes with Althorp. He added simply, "It is just the way it is." For William, the implications of all this are quietly significant. He is the heir to the British throne. He controls a £1.2 billion estate through the Duchy of Cornwall. He inherited a significant share of Diana's personal fortune. He wears her ring on the hand of his wife at every major public occasion. And yet the house where his mother grew up, the island where she sleeps, and the specific landscape that shaped her before the palace ever got hold of her, none of that will ever be his. It belongs to a cousin who most of the world has barely heard of, through a chain of inheritance that the royal family has no claim over and no ability to influence. Sources close to the royal family have allegedly suggested that William has found the situation quietly uncomfortable, though he has never spoken about it publicly. He keeps his relationship with Earl Spencer. He visits the grave. He respects the Spencer family's position. But the estate passes through a line that runs completely outside the House of Windsor, and that is a fact no amount of goodwill or good manners can change. And while the Althorp question was already charged enough on its own, a separate development inside the royal household was about to pour fuel on a fire that had been smoldering for a very long time. Camilla's secret transfer and the fury it sparked. In early 2026, a story broke through land registry records and then spread rapidly across the British press. Queen Camilla had transferred ownership of her private Wiltshire residence, Ray Mill House, to her children, not to the Crown, not through any formal royal process, directly to her son Tom Parker Bowles and her daughter Laura Lopes, with their representatives registered as the new holders of the property. The move had been made quietly, without announcement, and had gone unnoticed for weeks before the land registry made it unavoidable. Ray Mill House is not a grand palace, but it is significant in ways that go well beyond its market value. Camilla purchased it in 1996 for £850,000, shortly after finalizing her divorce from her first husband, Andrew Parker Bowles. She lived there for several years, while her relationship with Prince Charles was still officially private. She has described the house, set on 12 acres of gardens in the village of Lecoq in Wiltshire, as her refuge from the whole royal world. She has spoken warmly about tending its gardens, calling gardening the best therapy in the world. Her daughter Laura held her wedding reception there in 2006. King Charles purchased an adjacent property known as the Old Mill in early 2025 for approximately £3.8 million using private funds, reportedly to protect Camilla's privacy and prevent the neighboring land from being developed into a wedding venue. Land registry papers then showed that Ray Mill House itself had been placed in the names of Camilla's son-in-law Harry Lopes and a financier named Jake Irwin, acting on behalf of Tom and Laura, respectively. Sources close to the Queen described the transfer as a practical arrangement to keep the property in the family and preserve it as a private residence. That explanation may be entirely reasonable. Estate planning moves of this kind are not unusual among wealthy families, but the optics of the transfer were always going to be difficult for anyone paying close attention to the broader royal inheritance picture. Here was Camilla, the woman whose affair with Prince Charles had played a significant role in the collapse of Diana's marriage, quietly passing assets to her own children at a time when Diana's sons were navigating what they could and could not inherit from their mother's world. Insiders have allegedly noted that people close to William's household found the situation deeply uncomfortable, not because anyone specifically begrudged Tom Parker Bowles or Laura Lopes their mother's property, but because of the broader narrative it created. Camilla's children, who hold no royal titles and have no official role in the monarchy, were quietly securing a piece of the landscape, while the debate about Diana's estate and what her sons could access remained unresolved and emotionally raw. The transfer also happened with very little media attention in the initial weeks, which some observers found striking given how closely the press normally tracks royal property movements. It was the kind of move that, in a different context, would have generated days of coverage. Instead, it surfaced slowly, through official records, rather than through any announcement, and landed in the news cycle at a moment when other royal stories were dominating the headlines. And the contrast between the quiet ease of Camilla's property move and the much messier conversation about what Diana's sons were owed was not something that went unnoticed by the people who had been watching both stories for years. The invisible children of the palace. Tom Parker Bowles is 50 years old and makes no effort to pretend he is something he is not. He is a food writer, a well-regarded one, and the author of several books, including a recent title about royal recipes spanning Queen Victoria to King Charles. He appears on cooking shows. He gives interviews. He is warm and self-deprecating in a way that suggests he has made genuine peace with his unusual position in British life. He says they are married in, not the royal family. He has joked on a podcast that if he became a prince, the gates of Buckingham Palace would be stormed, and it would be the quickest way to revolution. His sister Laura Lopes is quieter. She is 47, works as an art curator, and has largely managed to stay out of the spotlight despite her mother's position. She attends important events when the moment calls for it. She was at Harry and Meghan's wedding in 2018. She was at Queen Elizabeth's funeral in 2022. Her sons Gus and Louis Lopes served as page boys at King Charles's coronation. But she does not give interviews, does not make statements, and does not appear to seek recognition for her relationship to the throne. Tom told People magazine that his children have grown up calling Camilla Gaga and King Charles Upa, and that they adore both of them. He described Charles as a wonderful step-grandfather. He spoke positively about the reality of blended families, saying that in 2024, things work differently than they did in the Victorian era, and that as long as everyone is happy, the arrangement makes sense. He acknowledged the complexity of the history without making it the center of his public persona. Beneath all the fake smiles, the actual setup between Camilla's kids and the rest of the royal family is way more awkward than it looks. Tom and Laura have never actually spent Christmas at Sandringham with the royals. Tom even admitted it himself, though he made up a bunch of random excuses to avoid explaining why. They do not have any royal titles, and they have absolutely zero chance of ever touching the throne. Their own mother is literally the Queen of the United Kingdom, but they are still forced to sit completely outside the family business. They get a front row seat to watch the show, but they will never actually belong to the club. Sources have allegedly suggested that William's relationship with Tom and Laura is cordial, but careful. The history between their parents is never far from the surface. Tom and Laura grew up during the years when their mother's relationship with Charles was an open secret that Diana was living with in real time. The marriage broke apart. Diana died, and Charles eventually married Camilla in a civil ceremony in 2005. All four of the children, William, Harry, Tom, and Laura, were present at that wedding. They posed for photographs together. Whatever each of them was carrying privately, they kept it out of the frame. Now Camilla has handed Ray Milhouse to Tom and Laura through a discreet legal process, and those two people who have always stood just outside the official story of the royal family suddenly find themselves holding something tangible. A property, a piece of English countryside, a home their mother loved for 30 years. And for people who remember what Diana lost and what she never got back, watching Camilla's children quietly secure their inheritance while the question of Diana's legacy remains unresolved is a contrast that is very hard to sit with. What the palace never wanted anyone to add up to. When all of these pieces are put together, a very clear picture emerges that the royal family would definitely prefer to keep hidden from the public. Prince William currently controls a £1.2 billion estate that he got automatically from a 700-year-old law. He inherited his mother's personal millions, along with her most famous jewelry, and he is the literal future king of England. He has the money, the resources, and the massive institutional power to do pretty much whatever he wants with his life. But despite all of that wealth, the one specific place that holds the most personal pieces of his mother's childhood, the house she grew up in, the island where she is buried, and the actual estate that shaped her life before she ever met the royals, is completely owned and controlled by someone else. At the same time, Camilla, the woman Diana confronted face-to-face at a birthday party in 1989 about her ongoing affair with Charles, a confrontation that reportedly silenced an entire room, has quietly transferred her private estate to her own children through a legal process that attracted minimal press attention until the records made it impossible to ignore. Her children, who hold no royal titles and no official roles, have just had a significant private asset secured in their names. Charles Spencer wrote about his sister's burial site that its remoteness was entirely intentional. He wanted her to have peace. It was one of the few decisions made on Diana's behalf in those years that was made entirely out of love, with no institutional calculation involved, and it remains the one place in England that the palace cannot reach, cannot manage, and cannot use for its own purposes. Whether that is comfort or tragedy depends on where people stand. For the fans who love Diana most fiercely, the image of that small island on the oval lake, surrounded by water, accessible only by boat, controlled by the Spencer family and not the Windsors, looks less like a burial place and more like a final act of defiance. She went home. She belongs to the Spencers in death in a way she was never fully allowed to belong to herself in life. And the palace did not follow her there. William's inheritance, in the end, is a strange and contradictory thing. He has more wealth and power than his mother ever possessed within the royal system. He has her ring, her money, her public legacy, and the throne waiting for him at the end of a line that has always run through him and not around him. But he does not have Althorp. He does not have the ground. He does not have the island. He does not have the place where Diana finally became unreachable. Some commentators have said that William has made peace with all of this, that he understands the rules and respects the Spencer family's position, and that his relationship with his uncle, Earl Spencer, remains warm and functional. Others have suggested privately that the arrangement is one of the harder things William lives with, the knowledge that the most personal geography of his mother's life will pass through a cousin he barely knows while he becomes one of the most powerful men in the world without ever being able to protect the place she loved most. Has the palace done right by the woman it failed so publicly? And should Camilla's children be allowed to quietly inherit while those questions remain unanswered? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.